In this video, we'll be discussing the language milestones your little one will have from the age of 1 year old to 2 years old. First, we'll start with them hearing and understanding language. Your little one will be able to point to a few body parts when you ask them to. So your child might be able to point to their head, to their foot, to their hands, or even maybe their eyes or their mouth. Your little one will also be able to follow simple one-step directions, such as put it in, turn the page, or blow. Maybe they're blowing out candles or even when they're blowing bubbles. Your little one will be able to respond to simple questions such as who's that or where's your jacket? They might be able to answer with a familiar person such as mom, dad, or a different family member or caretaker, or they might be able to answer a where question such as there or table or floor in a position of where their jacket might be. They'll be able to listen to simple songs, stories, and even rhymes. Your little one will be able to point to pictures in a book when you name them. So if you're going through, for example, an animal book and there's a dog there, if you say point to the dog, they should be able to go and point to that dog. Now let's talk about their talking and communication. Now, at around this age, between the age of 1 and 2, your child will start to be saying a lot of new words. They should be saying anywhere from 50 words to about 100 words by the time they're 2 years old. In addition to having their P, B, and M sounds, they will now start to develop H and W sounds, and they will start to use these in words. So at around 18 months, familiar people such as parents or caretakers will be able to understand what the child is saying about 25% of the time. Whereas in people who are unfamiliar with the little one, they might not be able to understand the child quite as much, and it might be from anywhere from not understanding it at all to maybe also 25% of the time. At around 2 years old, the primary caretakers will be able to understand the 2-year-old about 50 to 75% of the time. Now, people that are not as familiar with the 2-year-old will be able to understand the 2-year-old about 25 to 50% of the time. They can also start to name pictures in books. Maybe they might go and point to a book and tell you what they see, whether that's animals, colors, shapes, numbers, or the alphabet. They should be able to start to name some things in the books that they're reading and looking at. They'll also start to ask simple questions such as, who's that? What's that? And where's mom? They will also start to put 2 words together, such as mommy book, or no bed, or more cookie. Here are some things you can do to help your child continue to enhance their language and understanding of language. One of the first things you can do is continuing to model and comment and narrate what you see around you, what you're doing, what your child is doing, and what your child sees. So you might say, you see a dog. Look at the dog. The dog is brown. That's a big brown dog. And the dog says woof. You also want to make sure that you're using really short sentences that your child can hopefully imitate. If you're saying really long sentences, it's going to be hard for your child to understand everything that you're saying. So make it short, make it simple. You also want to make sure you're using correct grammar. Sometimes I see parents condense their sentences to make it simpler for their child, but then they start taking out that grammar that's important that we use today. And it's important to still be modeling that grammar. So oftentimes I'll see parents say, dog running, rather than saying the dog is running. So still keep your sentences simple, but make sure you're still using correct grammar. Talk about sounds that are around your house, whether that's a clock and it goes tss, 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 or you have a vacuum and it goes vroom. It really helps them become aware more to those sounds and the sounds that are in words. That'll eventually help them be more aware of their speech and their communication later on down the road. A really great time to play with sounds is actually during bath time. At bath time, you're usually at eye level with your child. They can see your face and you can see their face. And that's a really good time to experiment with other sounds. You can make the p-p-p sound when you're popping things. You make the b-b-b sound when you're making bubbles. You can also make the sound when you're playing with vehicles. So continue to experiment, play with different sounds with your child. You also want to make sure that you're adding words to what your child says. So if your child says, that's a car, you then can be modeling, that's a red car. You always want to be modeling at least one step further than what your child's always saying to always expand their language. A lot of the times I see a lot of parents almost only imitating their child, and while imitation is good, you also want to make sure that we're expanding their language. So you can imitate them, but also expand a little bit while you're there to continue to enrich the language that they're hearing. Read to your child every day. find some books with some really great pictures. You can find some with really simple words. And a lot of times you can read them the stories, which is great, but you can also talk about them too. And I actually find it more enriching to actually talk about it because you can really meet where your child's at the language level they're at, seeing that they can talk about a page and then maybe you can talk about a page. So that way they're getting a chance to model their language and then you're getting a chance to also model new language, and you guys can take turns in that way talking about what you see, talking about what's happening in the page. And of course you can also read the story as well, but make sure you're always switching it up every time. You don't have to read the story every time. Have your child point to pictures that you name. This is really great to show that they understand the new vocabulary that is around them. Now, a lot of times parents tend to get really testy with this and will have a book and say, show me the dog, where's the dog? And expect their child to go and look at the dog, and maybe sometimes they will and maybe sometimes they won't. And so I say if your child's having a hard time with this, that's then your chance to start modeling that language. So then you can model it and say, oh, I see the dog, I see whatever it is. So that way they're hearing it from you. And then maybe after you've modeled it maybe 5 or 10 times, maybe then you can try it again and see if they know it by now. And if not, that's okay. Continue to model it. You'd be surprised eventually when your child is able to identify it and say it on their own. Talk to your little one in the language that you are most comfortable with. I've had some caretakers and parents ask me that they were hesitant in talking in one language, afraid that it might confuse them when they hear another language, and that's just simply not the case. Talk to them in whatever language you are most comfortable with, and they will be able to grow and understand in the language that you speak. Now, if you want some ideas on how to continue to enhance your child's language and even help them get more words, go ahead and check out this video right here in which I talk about how to expand play and the power of when you expand play that really helps expand their language. So go ahead and check that video out. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video or found anything in this video helpful, please consider getting it a big thumbs up by liking and subscribing. I would really appreciate your support as it continues to encourage me to make more videos like this.